everybody. I'm Sherry Reichert-Ballou. I am a certified high performance coach and author of Say It Now. And I am so excited to have my fellow coach, Nikki Hale, here. Hey. And Nikki, is there any other way you want to introduce yourself besides as a certified high performance coach?
Well, I like to call myself a rebel leader.
I love that.
And part of that is because I've always, since an adolescence, been sort of a punk rocker, and I have rediscovered, actually at HPA, I rediscovered through one of the visualizations that Brendan did with us, sort of this connection to my rebel spirit. And so I call myself a rebel leader.
I love that. I love that. It's so fun, and I can feel that from you, right?
Yeah.
Like, how's that show up in your work? Where's the rebel come in?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because people often think of a rebel as someone who fights every single rule and wants to fight every single moment in time. And I see myself as a rebel providing diverse voice and also including diverse voices in conversations. And so when you think of a problem, if you only have one way of looking at it and you don't bring all the different diverse feelings or thoughts into it, what happens is you just get one way of looking at a problem. And so I think it comes from my youth development work, is involving people, means that sometimes you got to like fight some of the things that are put in place to say these things don't actually make sense for the group of people that we're trying to serve. So that's where it really connects with me, is this idea of finding voice for people who don't have voice. And I think I found that for myself when I was an adolescent as well.
Wow, Nikki, I feel like we could talk about that the whole time. That's so powerful. And I'm curious, because we are here to talk about like self-care and positivity during this time. Is there a way that rebel part of you has been at work during this crisis?
Yes. Yeah, it's I think one of the things that I knew early on, which was sort of a little bit self-serving, but also I knew I needed to do something of service to those who were teaching and in the youth development field, is that I wanted to create a space where those people could come and just have a download, a chat, where someone else was leading for the moment in time. So every single day since March 19th, I go on for half an hour and I lead a conversation, either providing some content and then discussing. Sometimes it turns into a little coaching call. Sometimes it's just, there's a show in England called Desert Island Discs. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's been going since, I think, like before World War II. And it is a show where famous people came on and they would just talk about the 10 songs that they would take with them onto a desert island and the 2 books that they would take other than their spiritual book.
Right.
And so I've been doing that with people as well. So just, I wanted to hold space, primarily because I knew that those people were holding space for lots of others and often didn't have a place to talk about the things that were going on for them. So that's been going on.
We're talking teachers?
Sometimes, yeah, I sort of made it available to all the youth development workers that I have worked with. And then my wife is a 4th grade teacher, so we made it available to the teachers in her community. Wow. And just sort of, I sent it out to my email list and said I will be there. So I do it like 1 o'clock on one day and then 6:30 on another day. So depending on when people are working. And sometimes lots of people show up and sometimes nobody shows up. And I just do a video for myself to practice using the video. So whatever happens, it's a moment for opportunity for learning. So
Nikki, I just really want to acknowledge that you have shown up every single day for people, right? So, this is what we're talking about too, is different ways of bringing positivity and self-care. And certainly it feels as if you're providing a space to take care of other people.
Yeah, I think and as I said, it takes care of me as well.
Yeah.
Like my work is as a high performance coach. My work is a trainer and facilitator of adults that work with young people. And all my training stuff has sort of stopped because we're not able to do trainings. I can't travel. And so finding ways to maintain connection with groups of people and being in a teaching mode has been really important for me as well. So I think one of the things was recognizing early on that I can serve, but I also need to take care of here and take care of stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. And so if you could say, So what are some of the things that you've really seen about the ways that you've offered to people, by holding the space? Like, what are some of the self-care that's come from that for people, or the places of quiet joy, for instance?
I think sometimes it's actually people finding that they have to create stronger boundaries for themselves, having like working at home,
Yeah.
and now work is at home, and figuring out like where is work stop,
Yeah.
when home begin, and where do my emotions flow with all those moments in time. And even from like my wife and I, when early on in this, she's doing remote learning with her students. I'm
Right.
doing remote work, which I've done for a while, but we were like all over the house, and we got very quickly, we're like, the whole house is work and this can't go on. And so
Oh,
we created a command center in one of our spaces where all the work stuff stays. And so I think that's one of the things I've noticed in conversations with lots of people is like finding the boundaries, physically, but also I think even just with their email boxes and their phones and Zoom calls, because I think everyone wants to connect, but there's a certain amount of over connection, like on Zoom, right? It's like if I'm on Zoom all day and then my family wants to Zoom with me that same evening, at some point, like but there's I think the BBC did an article on Zoom fatigue where we
yes.
use and employ different ways of looking at people because we don't get the usual clues that we do in a regular meeting. And so just acknowledging that and having people think about how to create their boundaries for themselves. I think routines in the morning, as well, have been important. I know for me, have been really important.
I love what you're saying, and I want to say hi to Lady Lexi's here. Hi. I love what you're saying about boundaries. And believe it or not, this is the thing I love about these Facebook Lives with people is that all the coaches I've talked to, no one's really talked about that in the way that you just did. And it's so important.
Right.
Like when you talked about having that control center in your home, like so that you have boundaries. It seems like, oh, of course, but it's not.
Yeah, it's
Right?
and it took us like 3 or 4 days of like bouncing around and going, why does this feel so weird? And sort of having misconnects in our communication,
Yeah.
to sort of sit down and go, no, we need a space that's work and we need a space that's home. And when the weather was worse, it was meant we were inside more. Now the weather's got a little better, we can expand outside. But it was really important to find where those boundaries were for us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just also love what you were saying because I have really experienced this too. I had a lot of Zoom calls before any of this happened because I work from home.
Right.
But you're right. Like then now all of my friends and family want to be on Zoom because everyone's so excited who doesn't usually use it. But that fatigue is very real.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I'm on a computer almost all day long anyway.
Right.
So I've been, requesting from, when it's a personal call, I want to be out walking and talking, and I just say, can't we go for a walk? Go somewhere pretty in nature. We'll send each other photos, as we're walking, of course we're not in the same place, but just to be out on the phone instead of on Zoom. And I almost find that it's connecting for me in a different way, because sometimes when I'm on video, there's distractions and I don't know. Do you find that?
Yeah, I think there's also like this preempting that there's going to be something that might go wrong. So like I can watch everything and make sure it's okay. And
That's funny.
It's interesting. I just did an example. Like my parents are in England, and so I mainly do phone calls with them like every other day, and have done for a really long time. And my mom wanted to do something where she could see us, and we were doing Zoom. But I found those so draining because just helping with the technology for my mom.
Yeah.
And Dad was like, okay, we're spending more time wondering where your hand is rather than talking to each other. So we do more. I think when we're in phone calls, we can be actually more present with one another,
Yes.
in a very different way.
Yeah.
So I try with them to do phone calls as much as possible. It's it's interesting to think about technology, especially I think for people who technology is such a, like, it's not in their vocabulary, for my parents to be on all these platforms.
Right. And yeah, that is interesting. Well, and Nikki, I also want to talk about, because obviously you're a coach, you're supporting a lot of people, and you have a partner, the wife that you guys are emotionally supporting each other. What are you doing for you? Like, how are you taking care of yourself?
Well, I make sure I'm in a challenge. There's a local gym that has been doing a fitness challenge where there's actually 3 sisters that own this gym, and they have been doing virtually all through April and all through May, starting May. They do a morning workout. It's a community of about 30 of us that all get on and do workouts together. One of the sisters does some meditation stuff that she leaves on there. And so I found, like, for me, my self-care, like the physical side of that, having a challenge and accountability to show up for other people. Even though there's not a competition, it's just like we're all there together. And so I think that's been important. And then I use these, the 3 M's, which are meditation in the morning is really important to me. Movement, which is either that can be just as simple as going for a walk. If I'm not working out, it's like a walk. It's like, and I write them in my high performance planner every single day. Yeah. So it's always meditation, movement, and menu. One of the things I think for me has been really important is to think about the things that are going into my body.
Yeah.
And I have rediscovered cooking like no one else. My mom was a home economics teacher, and so it's always been in my genes, but like we've been doing a lot more cooking. And so being more mindful about what I am cooking and when I'm eating those things has been really important. And then Brendan added momentum, which was another M, and it just aligned beautifully for me. And so I've been like, those things in terms of my self-care have been looking at the 4 M's, making sure that every single day that there's some sort of meditation. And if I can't sit down to meditate, then it's meditating when I'm walking, and shutting all the stuff off and thinking about myself in those moments in time. And I know when it's off is when I haven't taken time to actually put those things into my schedule. Like when the schedule gets loose and I haven't not really held on to it as strong as I want to, those are the moments I think I feel like those dips in my energy and the dips in the way I'm feeling about what's happening in terms of the COVID-19 and stuff. So I see a strong correlation between the structure for me, my self-care. So yeah.
I love that. I love that it's so structured. I love that you have a framework for it. And it's so simple. I mean, I just love the M's. And I'd like, if you want to say a few more words about how does momentum serve you?
So for momentum, it's funny, I was talking to someone about this on one of these little rebel chats that I have. And for me, momentum is making sure that every single day I'm doing something towards the bigger aspirations that I have for where I want to be. And some days, and like Brendan describes that, right, as having your hands on your goals and not letting them go, even though there might be lots of stuff going on. So for me, momentum is like, however small, I'm moving forward.
Yeah.
I'm moving forward. And being able to sort of create, I'm probably the worst person at creating metrics for myself, but I've learned that I have to have some of those metrics for myself to figure out, like, where am I moving forward and where am I just getting stuck?
Yeah.
Being much clearer about, if I want to do something and it's connected to me wanting to be able to coach more people, then what are the things I need to do to be able to get myself there? And each day making sure I'm doing something to do that, whether it's learning something new or reading a book, or like, I have to make sure that those things are in place. Otherwise it's not like it slips away, but I think what happens, it gets harder and harder to move things in the way I'm going to move them.
And I'm so glad. Thank you for saying a little more about that, because I really feel like that it's something that during this time might be one of the first things that people feel like they've lost, right? To feel like they've lost momentum. And the way that you're talking about it, even if it's the smallest thing, to keep ourselves, and I know, I've really appreciated Brendan talking about how important it is that we stay focused on the future. We have to, we have to know that we're stepping into a positive future, that we're continuing our lives. And so I love that you're talking about that as part of it. And also with that compassion of, it can be the smallest of things, but you're still connecting it. Even if you're reading from a book, that's connecting you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think for some people, the momentum, it feels like when we talk about momentum and goals and future, that those seem so far away from what their current reality is, that it's difficult for people to put their hands around it.
Yeah.
And so the more that we can, I think, break it down into smaller chunks.
Yeah.
And have people like create their own expectations, but still challenge them. Like there's one thing I learned in all my years in youth development is we create high support and high challenge environments.
Yeah.
And so you can have a really challenging environment where people are pushing you and cheering you and like getting you to move forward. But at the same time, there's lots of supports that are in place. And when those supports are in place, then people feel like, you hear me, you got me, you're with me,
Oh,
let's forward together.
that is so beautiful. It's, well, it is, isn't it? It makes me happy to think of anybody, but especially youth, having that kind of, both sides, like the challenge, but the extreme support. It's, I would wish that for everybody.
Yeah, that's what I hope. I mean, part of the reason, like when I think about the rebel leadership, when I was talking to you about that, when I think about leaders, I also want leaders to sort of get their stuff together because at some point they're going to be creating environments, whether it's in a workplace, whether it's in a school, whether it's in their own families, that young people need to thrive in. And so at the core of all the things I do, whether I'm working with adults or leaders in organizations, I want them to think about how their behavior and actions actually create environments that young people can step into and thrive. Because and especially I think now, as young people in lots of places are disconnected from the relationships that they had with adults, whether that was in school or in after-school programs. Or I'm thinking about one summer, Chicago has a jobs program for young people, and there's a group of people who are trying to keep it alive, even though we might be working at distance.
Right.
Challenging organizations to think about what does it look like to have an intern in your organization, even though they might not be able to physically come and work in your space.
Wow.
So I think that's the beauty, I think, when you were asking earlier about sort of gifts that is, I think, the creativity that adults and young people are showing to think about how we might do things differently has just amazes me.
I love that. First of all, I love that you segued us into the question I really wanted to ask you, but wasn't sure how. But such a beautiful, it's so true, right? That the innovation and the creativity that is happening right now, it is a gift. Right. And I was telling you before we went live that I've been really interested in having conversations with people. I mean, well, obviously I have to say, honoring that I know this is such, there's so much grief and loss right now. And this is such a difficult time for so many. And at the same time, as often happens in life, hand in hand with the darkness, there's usually an extra burst of light somehow. And that's why, so I'd love to hear if you have other things to say about, gifts that in your own personal life or that you've seen from this.
Yeah, I think there's actually the gift of connection, and it seems counterintuitive, but I feel that the connections that I have with the people I care about most have got much stronger.
Yeah.
Because we're not able to be easily connected. So thinking about like my parents in England, it was my wife and I were due to go see them in August, which we're not able to do now. But like the things that we've been doing in place of that have been really sort of powerful and strong, and we're having different types of conversations about sort of like their end of life wishes, which like we
Oh,
weren't able to have before.
wow.
Like those were off subject. That we couldn't talk about those things, and so it's. And I know that sounds like a bit doom and gloom, but I think those are really important conversations to have with parents while they're still healthy. And so those have been real gifts. I think in terms of connection, also to friends that you like. Maybe we saw a lot, but when the winter is here, often those connections are not as strong. And something happened that we're learning how to play games virtually with one another, and we're sending each other jigsaws and like so I think there's this gift of connection in the in this in also confusion like that we might feel as well.
Yeah, Nikki, I love this. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I don't know if you know, but a lot of my books Say It Now is about gestures of love and ways, and it's basically gifts we give people to connect. And I am really fascinated. Way before any of this happened, I was always asking the question, like, when someone's sick or when someone's died, it's like the veil lifts, right? And we're more expressive, we're more able to really have those kinds of deep conversations. And I've always asked, like, how do we get that feeling more often? And it seems to have happened during this time, which again is another crisis.
Right.
But that in crisis, it's like our values come to the forefront.
Right.
Like suddenly, or at least it seemed like all of a sudden everybody was recognizing how deeply important all of their relationships are, in a way that maybe we were too busy or we were forgetting, or go ahead.
Yeah, I think that there's, as you described, it's like we were sort of a little bit out of alignment with the things that might be important. And part of that is because there's sort of pressure on everyone to keep going and get more and be like do more hours at work and do like instead of create like a balance in that space. And that's part of the reason for me, like the high performance coaching really aligned with me really quickly, because it talked about like that balance,
right,
and broke it down in a way that made sense, so that we could start to look at different parts of our life and say, where are the places that we have some controls over, or where are the places that we need to be a little bit more vulnerable and sort of let the guard down.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I do think that Morgan, who was another Sage PC coach who I interviewed, he said we were social distancing way before any of this happened. Like we're just on our phones like this all the time, but not in the way we are. That's what's not in the way we are now, where we're with people.
Right.
So I think there has been some sort of, really, to me, that beautiful alignment, and both with the people that we know and love, but also in the sense of connection to the world, the greater world.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we've picked off some ugly band-aids but I think we need to, like, as a community or different communities that we work in, I think all of us are seeing, okay, where are the places that we actually have an opportunity to do things a little differently.
Yeah.
Come out of this. And maybe things don't have to be the same if we don't want them to be. And so I sort of, at least like that, there's two sides, right? The darkness of it and then the lightness of it. And I think part of it is, how do we like shine more light for each other, on each other, and at the same time to be real about the things that maybe have been exposed as we look at some of the things that are happening as we go through this.
Yeah. Do you see in your own life, like, do you know of where there might be a pivot or a shift when this is over? I don't even know I don't even know how to phrase that, but
yeah. I think for me personally, I think a lot of the work that we used to do, where we would go into organizations across the country and do training, I think that that's going to be less, and it's going to be much more done in a virtual way. And I think we're going to have to find ways to sort of share the knowledge much quicker than we've done before. And I don't know if that makes sense. I think,
say some more about that.
So I think, so in a way, like if you come in as the expert and you're doing the training and you're facilitating, it's often in your best interest, like to be the very best that you can be. But there's a certain amount of people relying on you to come back and come back. And I wonder in this time if that we're actually going to have to move quicker to where people can do that for themselves. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's really interesting.
So I think about like if I'm a trainer and I'm going to go train a group of people, not coach, but to train or facilitate.
Right.
Do I need to go back multiple times to train that, or do I train people within that community who can train the thing and continue that in a much faster way than we've done before? Which I think then is a different type of business model. But I think people like want to learn how to do this stuff for themselves. And I think I'm excited to see if that happens.
I'm very excited to hear you talk about it, because what I'm imagining is it just feels like growth.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to me, it feels like growth for everybody, not just the people who are the trainers or the experts. That's really beautiful, Nikki.
That's my hope.
I love it. You know, I can't believe I just noticed that we only have a couple minutes left.
It's okay.
This has been so much fun. I love the different ideas that you've brought in and the different focuses. Was there something else that you wanted to say before we go that feels important?
I don't think so. I think just for people to be kind with themselves and to sort of acknowledge the roller coaster of emotions that they might be having, but to not let that stop them having momentum.
Yeah. I love that. I'm so glad that you spelled that out so clearly too. You know, be kind. You're right. Like there's so much going on, even if maybe we're not even aware of it.
Right.
Right. Yeah. But also I love your M's. Right. Let me see if I've got them. Movement, meditation, menu, momentum.
That's it.
Metrics.
Metrics. Write it down.
I caught that when you were talking about it.
But it's what's been amazing. They just keep coming up.
Like, I know.
Like I rediscovered my guitar that someone dropped off that had borrowed it for almost 3 years, and they dropped it off just before we went on lockdown. And so I've been rediscovering music. So it's been amazing.
Nikki, I can't wait to talk to you again in a year and hear all the new M's that have come in.
I know. I'm going to have a whole thing going. And thank you for having me. I really appreciate this space that you've created.
Oh my goodness, it's so fun. I'm so fortunate. Thank you for making the time. I really appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.